University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Just a bit of a background to put into context our opening ceremonies, our program today. SyenSaya, the Los Baños Science Festival, is actually an annual celebration of the Los Baños Science Community Foundation, which is one of the 4 science communities of the Department of Science and Technology. And since 2008, this celebration highlights science-based technologies and innovations from 22 member agencies, which I'm going to mention in a little while, located in a special science and nature city of Los Baños, Laguna. And today we are here for the opening ceremonies of this 3-day festival. And so without further ado, let us start our program as we call on the Philippine High School for the Arts, Musika Ibarang, to lead us for the doxology and the national anthem. We request everyone to please stand.
Bayang magiliw, peras ang silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pa sisiil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw. May dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin at araw niyang kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhatit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya ng pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Thank you very much. You may now be seated. Thank you to the Philippine High School for the Arts, Musika Ibarang. Before we proceed to the next part of our program, allow me to recognize the following officials and organizations which are members of the LBS CFI. First, we'd like to thank the presence of course, the President of the UPSCFI, Chancellor Fernando Sanchez, NEDA Undersecretary Rosemary Edelion, as well as DOST Assistant Secretary Maridon Sahagun. We'd also like to recognize the different agencies, 22 of them, which are members of the LBS CFI. If you're around, please stand to be recognized. Starting off with ACB. Asan po yung mga taga-ACB? BIFAR, BPI, LBN, CRDPSC, Boy Scout of the Philippines, Department of Science and Technology, 4A, ERDB, FPRDI, International Rice Research Institute, LBDHMC, LLDA, LBP, LGU, LSPU, LWD, PARFI, Picard, Philippine High School for the Arts, PhilRice, CIRCA, UPLBFI, UPOU, and of course, the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Thank you very much for your presence. Moving on, to deliver the welcome remarks, let's give a warm welcome to the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and the President of the Los Baños Science Community Foundation, Incorporated, Dr. Fernando Sanchez Jr.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Good morning. Okay. To Assistant Secretary Maridon Salagon, representing our beloved Secretary Fortunato de la Peña. To the National Economic and Development Authority's Undersecretary for Planning and Policy, our keynote speaker, Honorable Rosemary Edelion. Ma'am, welcome to UPLB. Iisa-isahin ko muna. Okay, Dr. Alexander R. Madrigal, Director, Region 4A, DOST. Dr. Reynaldo V. Ebora, Director, Picard. Kailangan ko yan kasi yan ang nagbibigay ng pondo sa amin sa research. Engineer Joel M. Lapis of LARC. Sir, welcome. Sino pa ba? Nasa si Noli. Ayun. Noli Vera Cruz of Erie. Forester Roberto P. Sereno, our tourism czar in UPLB. Tayo ka, para. Baka hindi ka pa nakakilala ng ano. Then of course, to my beloved Vice Chancellor for Community Affairs, who's been leading this LBFI, representing me when I'm always away. Of course, to our beautiful Vice Chancellor, Dr. Shirley Hamias. Thank you, Shirley, ha? And of course, may beautiful pa rin dito si Beanie Dizon, our MC. To the members of the Los Baños Science Community Foundation Incorporated, kayo pong lahat, hindi ko ma-mention na lahat po name nyo. To our special guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the SyenSaya 2019. Now on its 11th year, SyenSaya is an annual event that celebrates and brings to light the importance of science and technology in nation building, especially empowering communities. It is also an event that aims to bring together the general public, researchers, technology developers, as well as students in rousing interest and passion for science. In celebration of the 2019 National Science and Technology Week, SyenSaya's theme is Science for the People, Enabling Technologies for Sustainable Development. This theme is both timely and relevant as the theory and practice of sustainable development is gaining significant momentum and support globally. As such, support is critical, especially in addressing global challenges such as poverty, disease management, inequity, environmental degradation, access to food, and as well as access to affordable and clean energy among others. Recently, during the FAO workshop or conference on sustainability of foods 2 months ago, in the forum, they said that in the coming 5 to 10 years, there will be more obese people than malnourished people. Meaning that there are enough food or oversupply of food, but access to this food has to be addressed. Okay. And I think the scientific community should look into this very closely as part of the overall food system. Okay? Of course, this 3-day exhibit and celebration of science and technology and its impact to our society is made possible by the esteemed and dedicated members of the Los Baños Science Community Foundation Incorporated. Since 1984, the LBSCFI and its member agencies have been actively promoting the meaningful pursuit of science and technology and the continued development of Los Baños as a strong science community. And UP Los Baños is proud to be part of such community. Thus, among actively finding ways to produce and develop more eco-friendly and sustainable technologies, UPLB also makes it a point to support events such as SyenSaya, as activities like these are one of the many ways in which we can inspire and directly reach out to the general public as well as concerned stakeholders while involving them in matters concerning Los Baños community affairs. As such, it is our hope that everyone will learn something new out of this occasion and will be encouraged to explore and pursue science, not only as a career, but more importantly, as a means to help and improve the lives of our fellow Filipinos. Once again, good morning to all of you, and I wish you all an insightful and inspiring day. Marami pong salamat at mabuhay po tayong lahat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Sanchez, for stressing the importance of science and technology in nation building, as well as in helping alleviate poverty, among other important concerns. Following the welcome remarks of Chancellor Sanchez is a message from the Department of Science and Technology this time around. Representing the Secretary of DOST, Dr. Fortunato de la Peña, here is the department's Assistant Secretary, Ms. Maridon Sahagul.
USEC Rosemary Adilion of NEDA, Chancellor of UPLB and President of LBS-CFI, Dr. Fernando Sanchez, Dr. Nolly Vera Cruz of IRI, my colleagues at DOST, Dr. Reynaldo Ebora, Executive Director of PICARD, and DOST 4A Director, Dr. Alex Madrigal, VP for Community Affairs, Dr. Shirley Hamyas, Dr. Roberto Sereno of the Tourism Committee of LBS-CFI, guests and partners from the public and private sectors, our dear teachers and students, stakeholders from entrepreneur and agricultural sectors, member institutions of the Los Baños Science Community Foundation Incorporated, our friends from the media, and most especially to our men and women of science and technology in the Los Baños Science Community. Let me congratulate you on your 11th celebration of SyenSaya, the Los Baños Science Festival. On behalf of Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña, let me express our gratitude to the Los Baños Science Community, who silently yet persistently works to help improve the lives of our people. Be assured that your contribution to nation building is highly valued and recognized. Most technologies developed by the Department of Science and Technology and its community, including the Los Baños Science Community, use local raw materials that went through innovations in terms of product or process improvements, qualities that set them apart from their commercial and imported counterparts. These locally designed technologies factored in the social, economic, and environmental benefits to Filipino users. What DOST has been doing, which many may not consciously realize, is to improve the lives of the Filipino, because science and technology are continuously at work from the moment we wake up in the morning until the time we rest at night. Because of the dedication of commitment of DOST and the science community, we now have electric trains developed by our very own people. Our farmers now have local plant supplements to increase their yields. We're able to identify potential cure for certain diseases by capitalizing on our rich flora and fauna. We have developed applications that can detect natural hazards at any location, and we're capable of gauging and providing interventions to help improve our people's nutritional status. These and a lot more technologies, especially ones that can boost our entrepreneurs' productivity, are already available at DOST and its partner institutions. We are producing top-quality science and technology human resource whose contributions are recognized locally and globally. And we are even launching our capability into space. Please carry on and be assured that you have our government's support in all these endeavors towards achieving improvements in areas of food security, energy, environment, health, S&T human resource development, economic growth in the countryside, biodiversity, sustainable communities, and resilience and innovation. Once again, congratulations to the organizers for this celebration. Mabuhay kayong lahat at isang maagham na araw po sa ating lahat. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary Maridon Sahagun, for highlighting DOST's support for local technologies aimed at improving the lives of Filipinos 24/7. Ibig sabihin po, from the time you wake up until you go to bed, you have DOST helping you. We shall now proceed to one of the most awaited parts of our program, the keynote address. Here to introduce our keynote speaker is the research coordinator of the International Rice Research Institute and IRIS representative to the LBS CFI. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Casiana Vera Cruz.
Salamat. Dr. Fernando Sanchez, our beloved UPLB Chancellor and President of the LBS-CFI, USEC Rosemary Edilion of NEDA, the Undersecretary of NEDA, ASEC Maridon Sahagun from DOST, Dr. Ray Ibora, Director of PICARD, Dr. Alex Madrigal, Director of Region 4, DOST, Dr. Roberto Sereno, our LBS-CFI Chair of the Tourism Committee. And I also would like to acknowledge Dr. Ruben Villarreal there, our former UPLB Chancellor when I was at UPLB. Fellow ERI colleagues, students, and teachers from different schools in the region, friends, ladies, and gentlemen, good morning. It is indeed a great honor and pleasure to introduce our honorable guest and keynote speaker in this year's opening program of the SyenSaya celebration. Our keynote speaker is currently the Undersecretary for National Development in Policy and Planning at the National Economics and Development Authority. She holds a PhD degree in economics from La Trobe University in Australia and two masters, MA degree in economics from the University of the Philippines School of Economics and MS degree in statistics from the UP School of Statistics. Among her major responsibilities is shepherding the formulation of the Philippine Development Plan 2017-2022, or the PDP. The PDP is an elaboration of the country's priorities over the medium term and is the blueprint of government policies, programs, and projects. The PDP is anchored on the long-term vision for the country, we call Ambisyon Natin 2040 of the government, and the long-term development agenda, the Agenda 2030. The PDP also lays down the foundation for inclusive growth, high trust and resilient society, and a globally competitive knowledge economy. The foundation should be solid enough to propel the country on a faster economic growth path while ensuring that no one is left behind and that all Filipinos are empowered to attain their ambition. So this directive has been taken from the Memo Circular number 12 issued on October 24, 2016. The PDP is consistent with the priorities of President Duterte administration through their 0 to 10 socioeconomic agenda, and it also addresses the concerns of multi-stakeholders that culminated in the 2022 Agenda Malasakit at Pagbabago. The PDP also takes into account our country's international commitments, specifically the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, which is currently the focus of this year's 2019 SyenSaya celebration. So on all of these bases, our keynote speaker oversees the monitoring of the PDP implementation. In addition, she is in charge of providing technical advice on policy issues to both the legislative and executive branches of the government, especially the committees of the NEDA board. She is currently the immediate president, past president of the Philippine Economic Society, the vice chair of the Economic Committee of APEC, and a member of the Philippine Commission of the UNESCO. She has also been recently nominated as recipient of one of the awards for the Civil Service Commission. So without taking too much of our time, I am greatly honored and privileged to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Rosemary G. Edilion of NEDA.
Taas pala nito. Yan, okay. I should have just moved the microphone, no, it's lighter. Anyway, I understand the Honorable Mayor has arrived, so welcome po, Mayor. Yeah. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting the NEDA to be part of this SyenSaya. And allow me also to use the United Nations style of presenting salutations by saying that all courtesies have been observed. Yan. Mauubos yung oras ko eh. So anyway, so thank you very much for having this theme. This is really a very relevant theme, especially that we are, as Dr. Bonnie said, we're under this agenda for sustainable development. Next, please. So these are my key messages. When you talk about sustainable development, we really cannot escape but talk about the Agenda 2030 for sustainable development. But understanding this agenda lies in recognizing that it has two unifying principles and acknowledging its two underlying features. So you don't need to memorize all of the SDGs, you just need to imbibe these two principles and then understand these two underlying features. Next message is that the success of the Agenda 2030 actually rests in finding an acceptable compromise. When you talk about sustainable development, it's really about making compromises. It's about making sacrifices, and therefore you need to have a compromise. The Ambition 2040, Ambition natin 2040, provides a basis for arriving at this compromise. And then, of course, the most important message is that technology and research are needed to ensure effective and efficient use of resources to advocate for this change. Next, please. Next. There. So this is the illustration. Oops, next please. Backward. Back, please. Back. Back. Yeah, back. Yan. Okay. This is the illustration of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. This is the 2030 Agenda. It consists of 17 goals, 169 targets, 232 indicators. Ganun kakomplikado ang SDG. And now we're just given 11 years within which to achieve all these goals. So, of course, you know the first 6 of these goals, these are actually the unfinished business of the Millennium Development Goals. Okay, next please. So we always say, or the United Nations always say, that there are 5 key themes of the SDGs. This is what they say, this is what they refer to as the 5 Ps. Okay? Tayo meron tayong 4 Ps. Sa UN, meron silang 5 Ps. People, prosperity, planet, partnership, and peace. And this is actually how you sum up, again, this Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. But like I said, next please. You just need to probably memorize just 2 principles of this SDG and understand them wholeheartedly. First principle is, next please, on sustainable development, and the next one is on leaving no one behind. Can I? Yun, okay. Okay, next please. So when you talk about sustainable development, it's really about arriving at this interplay of the economic, social, and environmental dimensions of development. I'm sure you know what these economic, society, and environmental dimensions are of environment. Now, the thing is, they do not necessarily follow the same trajectory. So sometimes, if you just push for economic growth, sometimes it's at the expense of social development, and oftentimes at the expense of the environment. Okay? Even in our own personal lives, no? If you just work and work and work, then it will be at the expense of your love life. May mga minors pala tayo dito. It will be at the expense of your family, di ba? So, when you talk of sustainable development, it's really about looking at this interplay, making sure that it is balanced. The economic dimension, the social dimension, and then the environmental dimension. The second part, the second principle, is about leaving no one behind. I know that Chancellor said that later on, 5 to 10 years, there will be more obese people. But did you know that in the Philippines, amongst children, under age 5, 33% are actually considered stunted, meaning they have suffered from chronic undernutrition. So how can you reconcile this abundance of food with a high prevalence of malnutrition? So it's really about leaving no one behind. So this is the second principle of the Agenda 2030. Now, let me just say, next please, that the success of the Agenda 2030 rests on finding a compromise. Why do I say that? Because one, sustainable development means moderating the present economic growth, which necessarily uses up resources, so that the future generation would have enough as well. So it has always been said that we actually do not inherit these resources that we have. We do not inherit it from our parents. We borrow it from the future generation. So if that is our mindset, then, this should be easy. But of course, it's easier said than done. Next, the second principle, leaving no one behind, means having to content ourselves with fewer wants so that the needs of others can be met. For instance, let me just give you this, let me just recall with you what our parents used to say. Kapag may naiiwan tayong tira na pagkain, anong sasabihin ng magulang natin? Pag may naiiwan tayong tirang pagkain, huwag kang magtitira kasi maraming nagugutom. Diba? Dati maraming nagugutom sa Africa. Ngayon maraming nagugutom sa Pilipinas. Okay? So, for those who are economists here or with background in economics, have you ever wondered what is the economic principle behind that reprimand ng ating mga magulang. Bakit kaya? Anong koneksyon ng aking pagtira ng pagkain sa mga nagugutom? The thing is, once you buy something, let's say food, once you buy food, okay, well, that means that you added to the demand of that particular good, of that particular food, and therefore also to the resources that went into producing that food. In the short term, supply cannot adjust. In the short term, there cannot be any capacity expansion. In the short term, there cannot be any technological advancement. And therefore, this increase in the demand leads to an increase in the price. Therefore, your additional demand that would actually be wasted pala was instrumental in making it unaffordable to some. So that is the rationale behind that reprimand. Na tama yun. You just have to, buy what you need. Okay? Kasi sayang eh. Ang mangyayari, all those resources that were used up to produce that good, tapos hindi mo naman pala kakainin, hindi mo naman pala uubusin. It just led to the increase in the price. Now, next please. So these 5 key themes of the SDGs, remember the 5 Ps? Kami sa NEDA, we don't draw it that way. Yon. Ito yung logo ng NEDA na hinahanap ko kanina sa Los Baños community. Anyway, this logo of the NEDA, as you can see, tao ang nasa sentro. So I would like to redraw this and really put people at the center. Whatever it is that you're doing, it has to be people-centered. It doesn't have to be people from this generation. It should actually be people across generations and even across sectors to make sure that no one is left behind. And so like I said, next please, it's the ambition natin 2040, next, that presents this solution to finding a compromise. Implementing the Agenda 2030 requires sacrifice. And why do you want to make sacrifice? It's because we want everyone, every Filipino, now and in the future, to enjoy this matatag, maginhawa, panatag na buhay. Okay? Matatag na buhay, it's about having strongly bonded relationships. We have time with family, time with friends, strong sense of community, like here in Los Baños. Maginhawa, it's free from hunger, poverty, having a decent house, secure long-term tenure, transport, travel, and vacation, and then a secure future. So if you want this for each and every Filipino, both now and in the future, then we think that this idea of making the sacrifice would be much easier. It will help us arrive at this compromise. Next, please. So, we translated that ambition natin 2040 into a long-term development goal for the Philippines. And this is supposed to be, the guide for development planning across 4 administrations. That we want the Philippines to be prosperous, predominantly middle-class society where no one is poor. Our peoples will live long and healthy lives, be smart and innovative, and live in a high-trust society. I remember when I presented this in full, Sec Boy was there, and then he said, Rose, we are instrumental to having this prosperous, no one is poor, living healthy lives, being smart and innovative, and probably even living in a high-trust society. Totoo, malaki talaga ang kinalaman ng science and technology. Next, please. So this one was translated into first the Philippine Development Plan 2017 to 2022. I will not be able to discuss this in full, otherwise kulang yung oras natin. So anyway, this is the framework of the Philippine Development Plan. This is the first time that we have such a comprehensive framework for a development plan. This is the first time that we have this pillar on malasakit, which is about enhancing the social fabric, which we think is the foundation to having a high-trust society. The first time also that we're having the pillar on patuloy na pag-unlad, yung nasa green doon. And that is actually the chapter 14, which is on vigorously advancing science and technology. The first time that we have it in our PDP. Because we want this PDP to be, the foundation PDP for 4 medium terms, for 4 administrations. And so we need to think not just of this administration, but in the next years. When we first met with the DOST, with SecBoy, and told him that we want them to have a chapter, to develop a chapter in the PDP, I told him that we recognize that research, science, it takes time, and we may not really generate the income from this, in these investments during this period, but we know that we should be putting in the investments now. We should be producing the researchers, we should be producing the scientists now. So it has to be in the plan. We need to start now. Next, please. What we did was to integrate all the goals of the Agenda 2030 in the Philippine Development Plan. Because they always say that implementing the Agenda 2030 requires a whole of society approach. And I would counter that the PDP requires no less. And therefore, it will actually be very tiring if you have to implement 2 development agenda. And so what we did was to integrate all these 17 goals in the SDGs into the Philippine Development Plan. Next, please. The thing to remember again about the SDGs, the 2 key features, is that the goals are indivisible because the targets are interconnected. And the essence of the Agenda 2030 lies in the targets actually, not the goals. If you want to understand really the Agenda 2030, you really have to read through those 169 targets. Next, please. So we have this illustration, a network analysis of all these 17 goals of the SDGs. Okay? So we say here, this is actually what we mean by yung targets. The targets would straddle economic, social, and environmental dimensions. So these are the targets corresponding to each of the goals. And you can see here that if it's green, then that one refers to an environmental target, okay? If it's blue, then it refers to a social target. And if it's orange, it refers to an economic target. So as you can see here, for each of the goals, you have a mix of all the 3 dimensions. Next, please. Now, just a trivia. Which goal do you think is the most interconnected? You have there the 17 goals. Which one is the most interconnected? Hazard a guess? Goal 1? Hello? Wala? Goal 2? Goal 3? Ano tingin nyo ang most interconnected of these goals? Okay? Next, please. Sagutin ko na lang, no? Okay. Next, please. There. It's actually goal 12. The most interconnected is goal 12. It's about sustainable consumption and production. The second one is about reducing inequality within and across nations. Okay? And this is just, to be expected because like I said, the Agenda 2030 actually rests on 2 principles: sustainable development and leaving no one behind. So sustainable development, that's the essence of your goal 12. Leaving no one behind, that's the essence of your goal 10. Next, please. Now, this is just so that you can have a reference, easy reference to goal 12. Next, please. And just to show you, this is actually a tool that we are using to analyze these linkages. So as you can see there, if you address goal 8, then you are addressing so many other goals. It's a pivotal goal. It's a pivotal goal. And that's why we at the NEDA, we were very, at first we were rather worried because when we were doing the PDP back in 2016, we didn't know about Goal 12. We didn't know about sustainable consumption and production, but we already knew that it was a pivotal SDG. And therefore, what we did was to put a placeholder. I call it a placeholder in the PDP. So in the PDP, in Chapter 19 of the PDP, we included there just a sentence that says that we will be developing an action plan for sustainable consumption and production. And right now, we are doing just that. Next, please. We're coming up with a Philippine Action Plan on Sustainable Consumption and Production. It has so many dimensions. Actually, it has so many components. We're already done with step 5, nandun na kami sa step 6. So beginning with the assessment, the desk review, mga stakeholder mapping, meron na. We reactivated the Philippine Council for Sustainable Development to act as the steering committee for this action plan on the SCP, and we just added members to provide the direction, and so many other things. We have done the validation. Let me just share with you some of the findings from the scoping study so that you will know what led to the framework that was already developed. So these are the challenges that were observed from the scoping study. One is there's a lack of coordination in the implementation and enforcement of relevant laws and issuances. We have seen so many, let's say, solid waste management. You have DNR that is in charge, you have LGUs in charge, you have DILG, you have so many who are in charge of it. May overlap sila. Next, even importantly, is the absence of a monitoring mechanism on sustainable consumption and production. We do not monitor it, actually. Next is the lack of funds. Si Mayor would attest to this. Solid waste management is actually given as a responsibility of the LGUs, but LGUs would always say that they lack the funds to fully implement the law, okay, which is about having a sanitary landfill, etc., MRFs. So there is that. Next, please. Yet we see these opportunities in scaling up, strengthening and scaling up sustainable consumption and production. We're talking about the move towards sustainable tourism, the Boracay cleanup. That was huge, actually. Imagining closing up an entire island, the gem of the Philippines, the tourism gem. Kanina may tourism SAR tayo dito. So you know what I'm talking about, no? Sinara mo yung iyong gem. And then we also have been seeing lots of this zero carbon resorts, and then the implementation of the tourism value chain that actually focuses also on sustainable tourism. Then there's this effort on green procurement and eco-labeling. Okay? We already have a law actually on green public procurement. Kulang pa lang din sa implementation and enforcement. A national eco-labeling program still lacks some enforcement mechanisms. Sustainability reporting. This is a recent memo circular by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So it requires all publicly listed corporations to submit a sustainability report beginning January of next year. And then we also have other mga designs, consideration of the SCP in the design of projects. So we require projects to undergo ECC and then FPIC as well in project appraisal. Next, please. With respect to circular economy, when you talk of SCP, it's a part of it, one dimension of it is really about the circular economy. You know, making sure that whatever you consume doesn't go to waste, it gets reused, gets recycled. And these are we are seeing this development priorities for a circular economy. First of all, there's already support. It will support the Philippine economic development targets. It's also crucial to achieve the target solid waste diversion rate and etc. And we have identified, next please. Yeah. We have identified possible areas for considering CE, circular economy, municipal waste management and recycling, construction or climate resilient housing, informal settlement upgrades, food waste avoidance, urban mobility, vehicle modernization cities, more of the e-trains, electrical equipment, and then agroecology, food processing, etc., etc. Let me now present to you the initial framework of this Philippine Action Plan on Sustainable Consumption and Production. So after the desk review, after so many consultation workshops, we arrive at 3 themes. Because as much as possible, we want to keep it simple. We arrived at 3 themes. The first one is on resource conservation, efficient and cleaner production processes. The second theme is on recycling, waste and chemicals management. And the third one is about sustainable business and lifestyles. For each of this, in order to have this complete framework, then you need several aspects. You need regulation, you need technology and research, you need education and promotion, you need infrastructure as well. So for each of this, we think that the best solution is really about what we call choice editing, consumer choice editing, or even producer choice editing. It's really about limiting their choices, making sure that their choices are limited to the green choices. But when you start to limit the choices, then you have to make sure that these choices are actually superior to the choices that are being discarded. So we need to find out what are the conveniences being afforded by this old, choices or old goods, and what would make this other one, what would make them want this other one. Let's say the single-use plastic. Ano bang kagandahan nito? Diba? What would make them not want that? Kumbaga, pag kumuha sila ng ibang produkto to replace the single-use plastic, it will not be at the expense of inconvenience. It will not be at the expense of it's no longer affordable. So these are the things that technology is supposed to address. Yes, we need to come up with greener goods. We need to come up with greener processes, but it should not be unaffordable. It should not be at the expense of the economic dimension. It should not be at the expense of the social dimension. Once we discard a certain production process or a certain good, then that means you're displacing workers. Diba? And that will have an impact on the social dimension. That's actually the essence of our Green Jobs Act. Do you know that we're the only country in the world that has a Green Jobs Act? And one of the important features of the Green Jobs Act is the part that says just transition of work. That we know that as we discard a certain good, the use of a certain good, as we disallow, prohibit, ban the use of a certain good, then that means all those people that used to produce that good will be out of work. So we need also the research to be able to tell us who are these people, what are the other fields where they can transition very easily. What are the things that they need to have, they need to know in order to do this? Next, please. Just to share with you that these are the priority sectors of the ambition. These are the sectors where that needs to be able to produce quality goods and affordable goods. And therefore, these are the sectors that need to be innovative, and we hope also be able to transition into sustainable production processes so that one, we can all attain the ambition natin 2040. We can all afford this. We can all afford the matatag, maganhawa, panatag na buhay. So we don't have to sacrifice that, and yet we are still able to have the development in the environmental and the social dimension as well. Next, please. Just to share with you as well, 3 legislative milestones that were achieved under this administration. The first is the Philippine Innovation Act. This law establishes the National Innovation Council that will adopt a whole-of-government approach in steering the direction of STI development in the country. This National Innovation Council will be chaired by the President. The Vice Chair is the NEDA Secretary. And that the Secretariat to the Council will also be lodged at the NEDA. So it just tells you that this time, we want this innovation to happen all across the board, in all dimensions. And of course, being geared towards the ambition. There's also the Innovative Startup Act, which mandates the creation of the Philippine Startup Development Program that provides monetary and operational support to innovative and technology startups. This is being headed by the DTI, also with the DOST. So, to the extent that we can, the NEDA will influence also this Philippine Startup Development Program so that it will be geared towards sustainable development. And then very recently, the Philippine Space Act. We expect that this law will increase investments given the extensive application of space technologies on agribusiness, environmental conservation, national security, urban planning, transport, communication, disaster management. So many possible applications. Now, just to conclude, I just have 2 more slides. This is actually a rendition, an artist's rendition of how Pasig River looked like during the time of Dr. Jose Rizal. Did you know that in the novels of Dr. Jose Rizal, what are the 2 novels you remember? Noli Me Tangere, El Filibusterismo. Pasig River actually has a very special place in these 2 novels, especially in the Noli Me Tangere. All the major settings, the settings of major events in the Noli actually happened along the Pasig River. Okay? Now, meron dito mga estudyante, yung pamangkin ko nandito, bago lang graduate lang din to. You remember the first chapter of Noli Me Tangere? There was a very momentous event nung first chapter of Noli Me Tangere. You remember that? It's the, di ko kayo madinig no? It's the piging, yung pagtitipon. There's a party, okay? Do you remember who threw this party? Sino nag-host ng party? Si Kapitan Tiago. And did you know that Kapitan Tiago lives along the banks of Pasig River? If you read the chapter 1, you would see there that so many wealthy families lived along the banks of the Pasig River. You can just imagine then that if wealthy families would have their houses along the Pasig River, then that means Pasig River must be very, very beautiful. In fact, there used to be a beauty pageant dati, Mutya ng Pasig. Kasi mahaba ang Pasig. It has so many tributaries and it actually straddles so many towns. Mutya ng Pasig, you're the fairest of them all. Okay? Have you been to Pasig River lately? Have you seen the Pasig River lately? Parang, wala, no? So, for one, all the wealthy families do not live there. Okay? Anong nakatira ngayon doon? Informal settlers. Di ba? Do you remember that there was a scene there in the pagtitipon that they were actually cooking on the grounds? Yung tinolang manok, remember? Okay? Again, nandun siya sa banks talaga of the Pasig River. Can you do that if Pasig River was smelling like this? The way we have it now? Next, please. So how did it get this way? The clue is also given in the Noli Me Tangere. Next, please. Yung sinabi rin to ni Dr. Jose Rizal, chapter 1 of the Noli. Like all the streams of Manila, that's the Pasig River, plays the varied roles of bath, sewer, laundry, fishery, means of transportation and communication, and even drinking water, if the Chinese water carrier finds it convenient. So many competing uses, conflicting uses. It was unsustainable consumption. Ultimately, technology is important, research is very, very important, but ultimately, it really rests on us to have sustainable lifestyle, to adopt sustainable consumption practices. So, let's make sure that, the remaining pristine rivers that we have, the remaining pristine lakes that we have, let's make sure that the next generation will still find it to be pristine, that they can still hold picnics in that pristine lake. And so, with that, I thank you for your attention. Mabuhay kayong lahat. Okay.
Thank you very much, NEDA Undersecretary Dr. Rosemary Idelion. Indeed, as Dr. Idelion aptly declared, technology and research are needed to ensure effective use of resources and to advocate for change. At this point, we will award a certificate of appreciation and token, but before that, allow me to recognize the presence of the immediate past president of the LBS-CFI, Dr. Casiano Abrigo Jr. Thank you for gracing our event, sir. After those words of encouragement and inspiration from our keynote speaker, we would like to award a token of appreciation to Undersecretary Idelion. For this, we would like to request here on stage UPLB Chancellor and President of LBS-CFI, Dr. Fernando Sanchez Jr., as well as DOST ASEC Maridon Sahagun, representing DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña. Please allow me to read the citation. Los Baños Science Community Foundation Incorporated presents this certificate of appreciation to Rosemary Idelion, Undersecretary, National Economic Development Authority, as keynote speaker during the opening ceremonies of the LBS-CFI SyenSaya celebration, highlighting the theme, Enabling Technologies for Sustainable Development in support of the Millennium Development Goals, given this 28th of August 2019 at the Baker Hall, UPLB College, Laguna, during the celebration of the 2019 SyenSaya de los Baños Science Festival. Signed, Fernando C. Sanchez Jr., President, LBS-CFI, and Chancellor, UPLB. Thank you very much once again to Undersecretary Idelion as well as to Chancellor Sanchez and ASEC Sahagun for helping us award the certificate of appreciation and the token. After a series of those meaningful speeches, It is now time to witness a show of creativity, so we ask the dancers to please be ready through a dance. Where are the dancers? Here to present a dance entitled Bangang Manununggul. Let us put our hands together for the Philippine High School for the Arts Senior Dance Group. Thank you very much to the Philippine High School for the Arts Senior Dance Group. At this point in our program, we shall now have a turnover of star books. But please allow me first to read a bit of a background about this project. The Department of Science and Technology, through the Philippine Council for Agriculture, Aquatic and Natural Resources Research and Development, is donating 6 units of the Science